Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a splendid last look, really, at the great violinist Joseph Szigeti. With, what do we got here? 6 discs of stuff. The Mercury Masters. Thank God, coming to us from Australian eloquence. Thank you, Cyrus. Now, our very own Jed Disler wrote a splendid review of this box on ClassicsToday.com. And if you're a ClassicsToday.com insider subscriber, I really urge you to read that review. It's right on our homepage at the moment, with sound samples that you can listen for yourself, including some splendid comparisons between Heifetz and Szigeti in the Brahms concerto. It's very, very interesting stuff, and it's very interesting. I'll talk about it in a second. Now, Joseph Szigeti, as some of you may know, was at the very end of his career when these recordings were made between 1959 and 1961. He was a brilliant musician, a musician's musician. I talk about him a lot in these videos because he documented and wrote about in one of his biographical essays about the change in the violin repertoire and violin playing that occurred largely due to him and some of his colleagues over the course of the 1920s and 30s, when violinists stopped playing programs that consisted entirely of cute little popular sniglets, and actually began playing complete works, sonatas, whole things, contemporary music. You know, violinists, even more than pianists, because remember, pianists were accompanists. You know, so when they did a piano recital, again, it was difficult for them to get like a whole sonata in back in the day, but they toured with violinists and with singers who were really featured even more than the great pianist often was. But the violinist was always the guy with the tune. He was the instrumental singer, so he had the spotlight, and the famous pianist was just accompanying. And even in those days, people expected violinists to play popular favorites and lots of short bits. You didn't find big, long, complex sonata works on concert programs. They were played in domestic settings or salons or places where you had very small groups of connoisseurs. But even in those circumstances, it's really fascinating. Composers, of course, wrote marvelous large works, and Szigeti championed them. He championed contemporary music. He played early music. He played the Bach sonatas and partitas. He was a remarkably open-minded, universal musician. And like colleagues such as Pablo Casals and some other ones, he never had a seductive tone. He was out for the big picture when he interpreted pieces. And that's almost impossible to describe. You can't describe in words the shape of a sonata as it occurs in performance. Either you hear it or you don't. And so you had to basically deal with sometimes sour intonation. Some thought he had a rather wobbly vibrato, which he sort of did. He was not out to seduce you, as, for example, Fritz Kreisler did with his gorgeous, voluptuous cantabile sound. He just attacked the music like he was going like a boxer in the ring. And sometimes he won and sometimes he didn't. He was like Maria Callas in that sense, too. Somebody who was a thorough musician first and a soloist on his particular instrument second. And you come to him knowing that, even though he made marvelous recordings. I mean, this set contains the Beethoven and Brahms concertos. And he made wonderful recordings of the Beethoven and Brahms concertos on 78s, but you have to put up with the lousy sound. He was in better form, no question about it. But not in as good form doesn't mean that he couldn't play. I mean, it means occasionally the playing's more effortful, an occasional note may sound a little sour. I personally find, I mean, this is just me, that solo violin playing always sounds a little iffy. I don't mean that it's not beautiful, but you know, the nature of the instrument is such that it has an inborn frailty to its tone, which is one of the things that makes it so expressive and so touching and gives great violin playing, that feeling of risk and feeling of danger. And when you hit double stops on a violin, there's always a sort of scratch and scrape, torturing a cat quality, isn't there? Really? So for me, it's not so bothersome. If you're going to listen to solo violin music, okay, you just put up with it. So that's how I feel about this. And with that said, these are marvelous Mercury recordings, and let's talk about what's on them. There are 6 discs here. Eek. And if you have already read Jed's review, then you know what's on here. Jed summarizes things far better than I will, but you get, let's go through it anyway, the Brahms Horn Trio with John Barrows, the splendid hornist, and Mieczyslaw Horszowski, the splendid pianist, and the Violin Sonata No. 2 with Horszowski. And the fact of the matter is, at least in this particular case, Szigeti's compatriots, or not compatriots, but partners, are fabulous, and maybe a little better than he is, all things considered. They really, really, really play well, and it shows off some of his unsteadiness, especially in the horn trio, which is kind of a shame. But, like I said, you deal with it. Then we get the Brahms Violin Concerto with the London Symphony and Herbert Menges, or Menges, however you want to pronounce that. I never knew. And don't tell me, by the way. We don't care. You know who he was. If you have any problem, there it is. Take a look at the name, Herbert Menges. He was a very good conductor, a wonderful conductor. And this performance of the Brahms is terrific. It's first class. It's exciting. It's passionate. It's marvelously interpreted all the way through, and exciting, particularly in the first movement. It's really, really good. So we don't need to worry about the status of his technique when it comes to the Brahms, which he recorded twice before. Let's not forget. So yeah, there's plenty of that. Then we've got the Prokofiev violin sonatas, both of them, with Artur Balsam, another splendid pianist and a particularly sensitive chamber music player. Szigeti was a major proponent of Prokofiev's music for his entire career, and these are as fine as it gets in these music, and as understanding as it gets. It's just wonderful. Then the Beethoven Concerto with Antal Dorati. Well, Antal Dorati never recorded the Beethoven Concerto aside from this performance. He was a wonderful Beethoven conductor, as those of us who are in the know already realize. We know from his other Mercury recordings, and then from his complete Beethoven cycle he did with the Royal Philharmonic, he was a fan of sculpted audible bass lines. So frankly, because this is such a symphonic concerto anyway, it is wonderful to hear Dorati's approach to it, as well as Szigeti's. Now, Szigeti made earlier recordings which are more secure from a violinistic point of view, but it's still a very, very beautiful performance. And, as I said, there are times, the Beethoven Concerto is there are plenty of performances that approach it from the point of view of, ethereality and purity and sweetly singing lyricism, because that's what the piece is all about in some ways. Well, this one is more effortful, but the effort doesn't always hurt, especially in the long first movement, where a little bit of effort kind of wakes you up, if you know what I mean. So it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And like I said, he sees the piece whole. And, as a conception between soloist and conductor, it's pretty good. Then we've got the Prokofiev First Violin Concerto, which Szigeti championed. He basically premiered it. He didn't, but he was like the first major violinist to take it under his wing. He made a splendid early recording of it. I think it was with Beecham accompanying. And this is really good, too. As Jed points out, it takes him a little time to wake up in the first movement to get the flexibility he needs, but he's fine in the fast music. He's as virtuosic as anybody could want. It's a wonderful performance. Prokofiev desperately tried to get him interested in the second concerto, but somehow it never happened. So this is just wonderful. It's wonderful to have this performance in great sound. Then we've got the Stravinsky duo Concerton with Roy Bogas, who probably most of you haven't heard of. But he was a very, very good pianist, and he accompanies beautifully in the remainder of this program, really wonderfully. Szigeti made an earlier recording of the duo concertant with Stravinsky at the piano. Well, as with his conducting, Stravinsky was not anyone's idea of a great pianist, and so it's wonderful to have this music played with a real pianist, if you know what I mean. And then we've got CD6. Oh, is this an incredible program of violin sonatas? Are you ready for this? I mean, this is Szigeti in a nutshell. It's extraordinary. Honegger's first, Webern's four pieces for violin and piano, Opus 7, Debussy's violin sonata, Charles Ives' fourth sonata, which Henry Cowell encouraged Szigeti to play, and then the Bartók violin sonata number 2, all with Roy Bogus at the piano. What a program that is. That is one serious connoisseur's look at 20th century violin sonata repertoire, isn't it? I get excited. I get the chills just looking at the repertoire list. It's absolutely amazing. And so here we have it, an extraordinary collection by a very, very great artist, and I can recommend it accordingly. If you like solo violin music, you're going to want to hear this. You really are. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.